This is 40K Today. More fun than a Games Workshop release party, and with a higher nerd count.
Hello and welcome to a special Best of 40K Today, Monday to Friday, where your daily 15-minute news, views, and interviews deep dive into the whole hobby of Warhammer 40,000. Today we bring you a selection of our favorite interviews of the week. We have to say a massive thanks to our friends at Frontline Gaming for having us on as a guest on Saturday. If you like what I hear, give us a listen during the week at 40ktoday.com, or you can find us via your favorite podcast player. I'm your host, Don Damaris, and today on the program, new 40K. Paul Murphy, Mikey Herbert swing by to tell us talk all things 9th edition. Jim Vesal takes a break from beating people to give us some great hobby tips. And Richard Siegler, the ITC champion himself, tells us what we need to know about Ad Mech and their new releases and Psychic Awakening. Let's get this show on the road. Lots of interesting information is coming out about 9th edition, which we will get to in the second half of the show. First, though, we check in with the one and only Jim Vesal, who drops by to tell us about his new Soul Drinkers hobby project, which is absolutely inspiring.
So, Jim, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good, Paul. Thanks for having me on the cast.
Oh, I think a lot of people first became aware of you during your meteoric rise of tournament success during this last half of 8th edition.
Yeah, it was a good run. I think it was a pretty fun run, and I'm obviously super proud about how he did last year. So it's been a little quieter, obviously, this year, and haven't had a lot of time to flex the muscles, but it's been good.
Well, I mentioned this in the lead up to this segment, but you've actually got it all. You paint. You are an amazing hobbyist.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I've always been a painter first. Like, I actually was like, a lot of times you hear about competitive players that are like, I'm gonna set out to get better at painting, or like I'm gonna try to be a better hobbyist. I kind of came at it from the other direction, where I was always, way more passionate about painting and hobby and like the fluff too. Like I love the stories. I read a lot of the novels, Horus Heresy, all that stuff. So I've always been and even when back in the days of Warhammer Fantasy, I used to be very involved in that. So I always was that first, and I kind of set out to become better competitively. So that was I kind of came at it from the other angle. And I've always been a good player in my local meta, but never really like applied myself, I guess, because oftentimes, the lists I would play, the armies I would play was very much driven by, what I thought was cool, models that were cool. So I really set out when I started 40K 8th edition to try to play more competitively at a higher level. And I think I did pretty well.
Oh, you did absolutely well. Speaking about the lore influencing what you do, people can check out your Instagram. It's at jimbov_paints, where you've been working on what seems to be like a passion project.
Yeah, so I'm building a Soul Drinkers Space Marine army. Well, not building. It's now built because I've been working on it since October of last year, and I've just been kind of continuing to add to it. They've always been, I read those books. I think they came out like maybe early 2000s, like 2003, 2004. I remember reading those books as like a 16-year-old. I think I was maybe 16, 17 years old around then. And I remember reading those and just loving them because it's obviously a very different story than you get in the traditional Space Marine kind of bolter porn, where everyone loves the Emperor and like everyone's goody two shoes. So the idea of their chapter, if you guys haven't read it, essentially they are loyal Space Marines that still believe in the Emperor, and they're very loyal to the Emperor. But basically they think the Imperium has lost its way. And if you actually like objectively think about it, I mean, over the 10,000 years since the Great Crusade, the Imperium has lost its way. It's become this like super like authoritarian religious like cult, which is against everything that the Emperor kind of was trying to do. So, they're right. And as that gets them into a lot of trouble. They get into a lot of trouble against chaos and a lot of trouble against the Imperium. And so I decided to collect a chapter essentially of them. And, they check a lot of boxes for me as far as background. I really like the background. They got a strong background. I love their color scheme. Purple is one of my favorite colors. And, I'm a chaos player at heart. And, in the actual background of the chapter, there is a bit of chaos influence. Like it does turn out, spoiler warning, it's a 20-year-old book, so I hope it's not too bad, but spoiler warning, they've been manipulated by Tzeentch a little bit to cause them to go renegade. And there's a little bit of a chaos twist in there. And one of their main dudes ends up being like a kind of like basically full chaos. And then they basically discover that there's like a chaos corruption within their chapter, and that leads to a bunch of shenanigans. So it's been a really cool project. Yeah, I think I have about, I'm looking at my shelf now, I'd say almost 4,000 points painted at this point.
Well, what's your secret to getting that purple? Because these guys have, at least in the ones that you're showing, they have this really almost like iridescent armor. What is your secret?
It's actually mostly GW colors. I've been using Phoenician purple and Genestealer purple, and then I add pale pink from Proacral, which is the company. Proacral is the company that is paint company by Creature Caster. And I think for me, just the key is just, and then I use Jutri Violet as a shade to really get into those recesses. Some of it's airbrush magic, some of it's just making sure that like your highlights are really smooth, but. Yeah, it's a really good purple, and I'm pretty happy with it. So it's been nice to paint.
You mentioned Druchii Violet, and that is kind of like a secret weapon.
Yeah, honestly. So this is the thing. Like I actually I shade all my so the scheme for the army is basically purple, bone, and gold. Those are like the three main colors. If you look at the old album the old book covers, their main colors are bone, purple, and then gold trim. And then there's a little bit of green in there. Just as like a little bit of for some of my contrast. So like for some things like purity seals, I do in green. A few other small elements I'll do in green. But I shade all my gold with purple as well. So it kind of gives the whole model this kind of purple kind of tone. And I find purple, the Jutri Violet actually works really well for shading metallics. And it's something that if you haven't tried, I would definitely recommend trying.
I think that's the takeaway from this, man. Jim, let's continue to follow your progress. Interested to see how this army that you've been building for, basically for funsies transitions into 9th, man. I'm excited.
I'm really excited. And, it's, I just can't wait at this point. I'm excited to get them back on the tabletop.
That was Jim Vesal, and those Soul Drinkers sure sound awesome. Check the show notes for links to his Instagram so you can see his beautiful color scheme up in person. So Ad Mech got a bunch of new releases and a Psychic Awakening. You might be surprised to hear that the blue communist himself, Richard Siegler, is a big Ad Mech fan and stops by to break down some of the most competitive options for Ad Mech with their new releases. Richard Siegler, or as I like to call you, the Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. The guy. Let's talk about Engine War. So I hear that Ad Mech got some really good, neat goodies, and you're going to be playing some Ad Mech on the Art of War stream. Is that true?
Absolutely. I've been playing a couple games of Ad Mech. I've been testing out all sorts of new variations, especially focused around Electro Priests. And the new Ad Mech rules in Engine War are incredible. There's a lot of jealousy coming from those Demon fans and from the Knight players. But boy, Ad Mech got some incredible rules, dramatically increasing the power of the faction.
Well, that's cool. You want to just give the people or give the listeners maybe a few of your favorite ones that you've sort of run across, or the things you're most excited to test and get on the table?
Absolutely. First thing on the chart is these new Warlord traits that Ad Mech got. They're holy orders. You can get, when you choose one, you get to pick one of 3 effects at the start of your turn. And 2 or 3 of them are absolutely incredible. Some of the best Warlord traits in the entire game right now. Crazy buffs. Some of them are dramatically increasing Ad Mech's firepower. Some are more about durability. Others are about melee buffs. But overall, those Warlord traits are incredible. They're going to be a feature of every Ad Mech army. And the 1 CP stratagem that they received to get an extra Warlord trait is currently not restricted to only 1 instance, like a lot of other extra Warlord traits stratagems. So you could potentially get all of those extra ones if you have enough generic characters to take them, which is probably going to get fixed. But for now, yippee! Now, in addition to that, all the new units are incredible. In particular, the Severus Raiders, the gentlemen on horses who can snipe at characters and also have a pregame move. Extremely cheap for what they do. Sulfur Hounds are pretty good as well. In addition to the Taraxi guys. In particular, I really like both of those units, the Sky Striders and then the Sterilizers. Both have really powerful new stratagems. One of them allows the Sterilizers to hold units in combat on a 2-up. And then the other stratagem is also quite useful.
That's great. So then do you expect that we'll see more mono Ad Mech lists to take advantage of some of these new rules? Because Ad Mech typically you see is souped into a lot of other Imperial lists.
Yeah, for a long time, Ad Mech was kind of the loyal 17 or the rusty 17, as some would call it, and plugged into Knight lists, plugged into some other Imperium lists that didn't have a special bonus like Space Marines. But that kind of fell away as Space Marines dominated the meta. Right now, I think Ad Mech are in a wonderful place for a pure army. Mars is incredibly powerful with the new Forge World custom canonical. Lucius is pretty powerful as well, and then Stygies 8 is going to remain quite strong as well.
That's great. And then obviously with it, things will change up quite a bit with 9th edition. We don't know where that's really going to go, but we do know that pure armies are going to get more CPs, or at least that's what it sounds like, and that you'll have to pay to actually soup. So I think Ad Mech, it'll be interesting to see all the new Ad Mech lists come out, and we'll get to see a lot of the new models come out to play. Do you like the new Flyer, for example?
I think it's okay. Right now, there's a little points error in the leaks that it seems like the heavy Phosphor Blaster is written as 0 points instead of 15. Probably going to get fixed, so the gunship is going to be around 164 points, which is kind of a little pricey for what it does. If it was slightly cheaper, I think it would be almost an automatic include into Mars builds. But I think you'll still see it. I plan on running at least 1 or 2, and certainly just testing them out in lists.
Okay. Anything else you're excited to try with? What are the units that you're most excited to get on the table with the new rules?
The Severus Raiders. I think the ability to get up close and use their sniping ability is incredibly powerful because Ad Mech already have the best snipers in the game, the Transuranic Arquebus. And with Mars, it can now, if they're in that canonical, get +1 strength. So it's strength 8 now, AP2, D3 damage, got incredible range. The combination of being able to whittle down characters with the arquebuses from range and then getting close with the Severus Raiders to finish them off, I think that's going to be a really, really awesome tool that Ad Mech armies have. Hide your characters, John.
That's no good because I like to play character heavy. I'm very much a Hero Hammer player, and you're stabbing me in the heart, Richard. I don't like it.
I'm going right for the heart. No mercy.
Yeah. No mercy. Sweep the leg. Okay. Well, thanks for stopping by and talking to us about Ad Mech. I'm sure a lot of those Ad Mech players are super excited, and they'll be watching very carefully to see what you do with them because you do tend to set the meta.
Absolutely. I'll be writing an article on them very soon for Goonhammer, so check that out very soon.
That was our ITC champion, Richard Siegler, dropping some knowledge on us about Ad Mech. If you'd like to talk to him more, you can find him at The Art of War. Link, as always, in the show notes. Next up on the show, we chat new 40K.
Today's episode of 40K Today is brought to you by Frontline Gaming. Frontline Gaming is a one-stop shop for all your Warhammer hobby needs, discounted products, American-made gaming mats and terrain, and a full line of miniatures painting service and daily hobby content. And this can all be found at frontlinegaming.org.
And welcome back. Obviously, the biggest news in our universe is the new edition for Warhammer 40,000 is being teased out in bits and pieces across every day. Paul Murphy from Forge the Narrative and Mikey Herbert from Hellstorm Wargaming joined me to share just how geeked up we all are about everything that's coming down the pipe.
So let's just go around the table. What are you most excited about? We'll start with Mikey.
I think the thing I'm most excited about is the one that everyone is talking about. It's the fact that they're going to make terrain less binary, whether it does something or does nothing, but mostly it does nothing. From what it sounds like, they're going to have like special rules for each type of terrain or each type of board setup you've got, and having something that's more interested in just +1 cover or does nothing is sounds really, really exciting to me. Everyone seems to be talking about it, but I also think it's the most impactful change to the game by the sounds of it. So I think that's why everyone seems to have the same thing as terrain is the best one.
Yeah, and GW has given us some just some hints at that, right? So they've told us that there's this new obstructing keyword that basically, if you draw a line across that piece of terrain and it's obstructing, it doesn't matter what you can see, you're blocked, right? Because right, which makes it a lot cleaner. I think anything that steps us away from true line of sight is going to make the game experience better. If there's just some more concrete ways we can determine what's going on, as opposed to getting down there with a laser and being like, no, I can see your tail clearly. Come here and look. Can you see, like, if I look across the barrel of my gun, I can see the tail of your
through the cracks in that terrain that have only appeared because you've been storing it sideways for
exactly. I think that's hopefully with the fact that you're going to be applying keywords to terrain, hopefully, rather than, because GW have rules for terrain already, but it's just for a specific kit that they sell built in a specific way. And realistically, people's terrain sets is what they have in a box that they store under the table or in the garage or something. So if they can make table more abstract but works better in the game, that's only a good thing for everybody.
Mikey stole my answer, so I'm going to go with the fallback penalty. We saw today on the article that you can burn a CP and cut down your enemy when they're running away from you. That's one of the more, I guess, awkward things in the game right now. If you try to play assault, is the potential for people to just evaporate out of combat. Now, the penalty is not extreme, but it's something, and it's as someone who likes to play assault-based armies, the combination of terrain potentially being more of an actual factor in the game, and then after I've done damage to my opponent, then potentially taking more damage as they leave, sounds really awesome.
It also gives them something to think about, right? Because now suddenly they're like, we'll just use a hypothetical. I've got my Harlequin troopers who are very expensive on a point per model basis. If I take 3 or 4 mortal wounds on my 10-man unit, that's not something I necessarily want to do just to fall back so I can shoot your 30 orc boys.
Well, I think that falling back will always be worth it, right? You're falling back to either get closer to an objective or allow the enemy to be shot at or something like that. But now there is a bit of a risk. Like if you would potentially give up a kill point or whatever when you weren't expecting to, that could really slip the balance of the game.
I think that's a good point, but I think the thing that I am most excited about is the changes to command points. So they've sort of previewed today and in the past that everybody's going to get a set amount of command points based on army sizes. So if you're at 2,000 points, I think you're going to start with 12. They've also said that at the beginning of every turn, there's now a command phase where you play those beginning of turn effects or effects that happen for the whole turn, and you generate a command point, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then the thing that I think is great about that is so many armies are penalized so heavily for being elite in nature. And Custodes is like the golden poster boy for this, right? You can't make 3 battalion Custodes lists. It's literally point impossible. So you never had a lot of command points to use your really cool strats with Custodes, but now you get as many command points as anybody else, and it sort of levels the playing field between the elite armies and the horde armies. And now maybe we'll see a little less of this like abstracted weird thing where you had like the Rusty 17 or the Loyal 32, where you just had this like random detachment, do nothing detachment that was literally just there for command points. And it just detracted from the flavor of the army, the immersion of the experience. Now you'll see like these really cool pure Custodes armies or Grey Knight armies, and they'll be going toe to toe with a huge guard horde, and it'll all make sense. Like there's no reason to reach outside your codex to just add something random for a few CPs. I don't know.
That's a difficult thing to balance. Or essentially, it's proven to be a difficult thing to balance. And I think that everyone getting the same will present its own challenges, but it'll be different, in my opinion, fewer challenges than to try to balance someone's access to multiple battalions.
Yeah, I think you're going to see at the minute in a competitive army, you'll see really strange units being taken just so they can squeeze another CP out or another 5 CP if they're using, like, as we mentioned, double battalion. But now I think we're going to see something opposite, where people are taking units just to fill in slots in the original battalion just so they don't have to take another detachment because they don't want to sacrifice any CP. So you're going to see like just one battalion, but I imagine, or one brigade, and then hardly anything else. If you do, it'll be quite rare.
Booyah! Can you feel the excitement? I, for one, cannot wait until 9th edition gets here. It seems like Mikey and Paul are right there with me. As always, there's links in the show notes to both of these guys' excellent content on 9th edition. Okay, folks, who's ready to sing along? It's that special time of the show. It's time for Model of the Day.
It's the model of the day, the model of the day, the model of the day.
Every day during our regular weekday show, we feature a model of the day, and we've been able to show off some stunning work this week. Should definitely go back and check some of those out. This week's model of the week is one you might have already seen. This awesome Redemptor Dreadnought was submitted by Heirs of Azkelion. The model was painted using a mix of contrast and normal acrylic paints. The blend between the dark and the bright red is outstanding, and the conversion work on the sarcophagus and armor plates are phenomenal. And lastly, the money base really makes the model pop. If you have a model that you'd like to feature on the show, or you've seen a model that should be featured, don't hesitate to let us know. You can find us, as always, at 40K Today on Facebook. And that's it for today. Thanks for joining us. A big thanks to our content producer, Alex Painter, and our social media superstar, Tanya Gates, and our technical producer, Seamus Ronan, for all their hard work, once again, making this show possible. If you liked what you heard on the show today, make sure you come check us out at 40ktoday.com or on your favorite podcast platform. We do a 15-minute show every single day of the week with the kind of information that was found in today's show. We'll see you next week. Until then, for the 40K Today team, I'm John Damaris, and that's what's happening. 40K Today.